Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Sarah Blakley-Cartwright is the author of ALICE SADIE CELINE, a novel. Sarah is the author of Red Riding Hood, a #1 New York Times bestseller, published worldwide in 38 editions in 15 languages. She is the editor of Hauser and Wirth's The Artist's Library for Ursula magazine. She is publishing director of the Chicago Review of Books and associate editor of A Public Space. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss ALICE SADIE CELINE.
Thank you so much, Zibby. Wonderful to be here. I've been a subscriber for a long time and wonderful to be on the other end of things rather than just being a listener.
Amazing. Well, thank you for listening.
A more active participant.
Appreciate every download. It all adds up. So, Sarah, tell listeners about your book.
Okay. Yeah. ALICE SADIE CELINE is the story of a girl who falls in love with her best friend's mother, or because we hear from everyone equally, it could be vice versa. The story of a mother who falls in love with her daughter's best friend. And one of the novel's central questions is, can the daughter allow them to explore this love? It's a thorny arrangement, no doubt, but could we permit two people to have something like that? And it's sort of, when the idea came to me, I asked myself, what would happen if my mother had an affair with my best friend? My first thoughts were, I would be dumbfounded. Then, I wouldn't even know what to say. It would break every rule of the universe. I wouldn't even just be jealous. I would hate them. I'd never want to speak to either of them again. And then I sort of wanted to interrogate that first reaction and sort of felt like I had to, why such a visceral reaction? Why such fevered boundary setting around the people that I love? Why would that necessarily feel like such a betrayal? Is that actually costing me anything?
Interesting.
Questions I started thinking about.
Well, I feel like boundary setting is one of the most sort of fundamental parts of a relationship with a parent as you get older. I mean, and I feel like everyone struggles with this in terms of like their own parenting. And I saw you have a little one. How old is your little one now?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, Swan is 10 months old. And I was just saying that I love her in a very profound way. But of course, the minute that you put a title like that on something, you call something profound a film that you've seen, and then suddenly everybody says, that's not very profound, because everybody loves their child profoundly. But in this case, it is true. And I guess that's the limits of language, which is why it's so frustrating to be a writer, that there's just no word for these things. But it's interesting. We're talking about boundaries, and I really feel both sides of the characters. I feel Sadie, I feel Alice, wanting to both have the sort of bougie family life like Sadie is after, and also feeling a drive to live a sort of unorthodox life. And actually, I was never somebody who was like, I'm always going to be a mom. It's going to be what defines me. I always saw pregnancy actually as kind of an unwanted thing. I used to have nightmares that I was pregnant, or that I had a baby and had lost it, somewhere, left it on a playground. To me, it really meant both responsibility and also, the book is about sex a lot. And, the pregnant body is both totally sexual and totally unsexual. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you're giving up your life. It's your time is over. It's someone else's turn. But it changes everything. Life will and can never ever be the same. It's a task you will never be finished with. And I like checking things off of lists, but the rest of your life, you're a mother, and, it can feel invasive. You can feel, in sex, someone is inside of you, and in pregnancy, someone else is inside of you. So you can feel very invaded in a way. And then if you nurse, the baby is attached to your body, suckling and clamped on like a barnacle, and it can feel one directional, your body like a feeding machine, and you can feel used, you can feel emptied out. All that is to say, I love my daughter very much. And, it's complex.
Yeah.
That's the long answer to your short question.
That was great. I mean,
you have a lovely tennicle.
No, this is the point, is to hear from you. I mean, yeah, boundary setting is tricky. I remember, one of the first playgroups I had with my twins, and this is now like 16 years ago, my mom came like bursting in the front door and was like, hello, everyone. You know what I mean? And I was like, how about you like text or call or, I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was wondering, obviously, when you latched on this idea of a mother and a best friend, that's like, plot gold. But what made you start wondering about your mom and your best friend? Was it a look? Was it a relationship? Was it was it something that happened, or was it just your imagination running wild?
I think the character of Celine probably came to me first. I, thought about this woman who's 44 years old, 50 is in sight. So she's facing that particular challenge. And it's actually funny how many kind of in the pre-reviews, trade reviews, people have talked about her as an older woman. I'm like, well, she's 44. She's not really
not that old at all.
But, it's an age where, you start thinking about certain things. I actually heard a conversation between the writer Eileen Miles and the show creator Jill Soloway in 2016 at the Hammer Museum in LA. And I had already started on the book and hit upon this premise, but they're exes. And I was really inspired by the way that they approached each other, to not be so attached to this is mine and this is yours. They're this power couple who happen not to be together anymore. And that's fine. And it's what Celine is trying to convey to the girls, why take everything so seriously? And that really helped me in the genesis of Celine when I was first starting to get to know her. She's kind of a female chauvinist, which we don't see all that often in literature. She's bold, she's daring, she's a person of immoderate appetites. And, I do think that women approaching their 50s can sometimes feel like a little bit unseen, maybe for the first time, starting like invisible to society. And Celine is so determined not to be dismissed that she thrusts herself into the center of everything, and she's an activist, but her activism is kind of partial. It's mostly in service of herself. She's waving the Celine flag, and she's uncooperative. She's intractable. It can be very frustrating to be around someone like that, but it can also be really inspiring. If you think about someone who's always reasonable and logical, that's not very electrifying. Celine blows hot and cold. And I think I did, you asked me about the book, to tell you about the book. And I was like, what is the book about? It's about this situation, but it's also, I think, in some ways about how much we give up for others and how it kind of proves impossible to get out of that system and live for oneself. Celine is certainly trying, and some people can say that's very dubious. You should live for others. And, I don't have an answer on that, or, I don't, all the characters were very real to me. And I really didn't want the reader to identify with one character and not another. I didn't want you to write anybody off. I think you can tell when an author has an axe to grind with one or another of their characters. And I really didn't want that to be the case.
Interesting. And tell me about the decision to make this sort of initial attraction happen on stage, where there's already a performative element to it. And then how it became, this hot and heavy elevator moment, that seemed predetermined, which is like, okay, well, I'm into this book now.
I love how you say that. That is true. It is predetermined. It's kind of like from the minute they set eyes on each other, oh, something's going to happen. Part of that is the character of Alice. She is game. She's up for an adventure. Yep. And Celine kindles something in her. She awakens sexual feelings, but she also has this really broadening influence, which is very enticing for Alice, who's up on stage sort of trying on different characters. And part of the allure of Celine for her is she's going to tell me who I am. which for any of us could be very enticing, but then as the relationship goes on, it begins to turn. And, everything Celine does, even loving, is run through with an undercurrent of how is this going to serve me? And in small ways, she begins to demean Alice. And, I think it's really interesting. You say the performative element, and, an affair kind of has a performative aspect. It's sort of, an interlude is another word for an affair, sort of something that breaks something in a life. And I wanted to go beyond the sexual encounter. Of course, there's first that elevator moment, and that's that's the end of the first chapter. So, right. And I wanted to go beyond the, hanky panky aspect of the affair. And here it kind of veers into an obsessive attachment for a time anyway, before Celine is on to the next thing. But at the same time, that doesn't undo what is true, which is that Celine helps Alice tap into something within her, and Celine is trying, kind of, in her way.
I even love the title of this and how it's just the three women's names. Did you, having been through the title acts, machinery of, was this always the title? Did you think about other titles? I'm just curious.
It's funny. It was always the title, and the names were actually really important to me. And people sometimes confuse the names, which is fair enough. And that is evil on my part. I actually wanted names that sound like one person, like sort of three sides of a coin. A coin doesn't have three sides. So
okay, we'll pretend. All good.
Back to the drawing board. Yeah, that was important to me, actually. And I just felt it was really important that it was equally their three stories. I think people often are most attached to Celine, but, I think the book is kind of, if I can say, great, toot my own horn, but I think what's one thing that's great about the arrangement of the book is that it's a closed triangle. I'm drawing a little triangle there, you can't see it, but in one closed triangle, you have a mother-daughter, you have a friendship, and you have a romantic relationship. And I thought that was kind of great. So that's all contained in the title, is that you have those three, connections.
Amazing. You have your feet in so many aspects of the literary world. Tell me first how you got into this space, and then also more about everything you do.
Yes. So, everything I do, I'll start with everything I do, which is, wherever I've been, I've always tried to find other people trying to do meaningful work in the arts. So that's led me to a lot of good places. And after sort of a decade of working in the industry, I have a series, what do you call it? I edit a series for a wonderful magazine called Ursula, a magazine of art and literature. I'm the publishing director at Chicago Review of Books, and I'm an editor at a magazine called A Public Space. To pick at one, at A Public Space, we publish essays, poetry, fiction, art portfolios, oral histories, and part of the point of the magazine, a specialty of the publication, is that it's eclectic. That's kind of why it exists. And it won the Whiting Award a few years ago, and part of the judge's citation was that it was a cabinet of wonders, which I really
like that.
Feel very lucky for a decade to have had that kind of exposure. Where else would I expose myself to such a variety of voices, perspectives, topics, themes? In our reading life, we sort of shoot, I would be reading books about and by women who, but I'm forced to read all kinds of things, which is probably the best thing you can do as a writer. And probably, supporting other writers and helping them put their work into the world is probably the single-handed thing that will help me survive my own publication with any dignity. Because I've seen both sides. And it's, I started as an intern, then I became a reader. Now I'm an editor. I put in a lot of time so that I can now contribute in a way that works for me and with my writing schedule. And, but I did the layouts. I did the copy edits. I tabled at book fairs countless times. I did slush, and it all adds up to having a sense of how the sausage is made. So,
wow. And what about, transitioning to sort of adult fiction? I mean, in this case, very adult, but yes.
Right. I actually, Red Riding Hood, my first book, was a job that was handed to me. So I actually never considered myself a YA writer. Okay. Of course, everywhere in my bios, it says YA writer, transitions to adulthood. But it was a sort of wonderful and also bizarre opportunity. I had very young to work professionally as a writer. Warner Brothers was developing a film with Leonardo DiCaprio's production company of all things, Appian Way, and they wanted a novel to come out in advance of the film they were developing. And they hired me to write a book that would tell the backstory to the front story of the film. Yeah. And I was 22 at the time. So they wanted to get that perspective right of the young girl. And actually, they also hired me to write the voiceover in the film. And the novel sort of took off and had a life of its own. It became a #1 bestseller. I think it was in 38 languages or something. I don't even have copies of the book in every language. I've got to find those. Those would be worth having. But it was just so unexpected. I mean, I think it had Warner Brothers and Little Brown behind it, which helped, but they never expected it to do as well as it did. I went on tour. I remember in Brazil, there was a line of 200 teenagers waiting to speak to me. I mean, teenagers are voracious readers. They are amazing. And they are so loyal and they dress up like the characters. Somebody was, half of the people were in wolf hats. Most of them were Red Riding Hood. Somebody fainted. Anyway, it was surreal. It was a surreal experience. So all that is to say, I don't think I'll probably have that experience with this book, sadly, but who knows,
You never know. You never know. What advice would you have for aspiring authors?
Oh, the most very basic advice is write what you love, and not because you'll be stuck with it for as long as you're working, but because it'll just be a much better book if you write the book you'd love to read. That's really what I did with this book. I thought, I have never seen that arrangement among 3 women. I would love to know what happened. And I would say also work with your weaknesses as a writer rather than against them. Don't fight them. And lastly, I would say when you're making decisions, try to think long-term about your career. Don't make decisions short-term. That would be my 3 pieces.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. I'm sorry for some of our technical issues today.
We triumphed.
We got a lot of great stuff in there. Congrats again. Really exciting. This is such a highly anticipated book, and I know it's going to do great, and it's just amazing. So thank you for taking the time out to talk to me today.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Zibby. Thank you for your wonderful questions and your support for the book. It means so much.
No problem. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
Sarah.
Zibby.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.